This is just a sample of the audiobook. To get the complete audiobook, access the link posted in the first comment.
As the Bohemian rebels, Starhemberg, Thurn, and Tonradel, smashed their way into the Hofburg, they could be confident that all the strong cards were in their hands. How could this little archduke hope to resist their demands? They would intimidate him and force him to sign documents that would restore their freedom to worship in the new faith, confirm their privileges, and, above all, compel the hated Jesuits to leave the Habsburg crown lands of Styria and Bohemia. If he resisted, well, the windows were large and high enough in the Hofburg, and, as Thurn must have noticed with satisfaction as he raced up the stairs of the Schweitzer Tor, there was no dung heap here to cushion a fall. For what seemed might be the last time, the Habsburg withdrew to his private oratory, and once again, prostrate in front of the cross, Ferdinand quietly prayed that he was now ready, if necessary, to die for the only true cause. But, Ferdinand added, if it were God's will that he should live, then let God grant him one mercy. Troops. And, he added, as the noise rose without, as soon as possible. As the Bohemian ringleaders burst into Ferdinand's rooms, one of their number, Tonradel, seized the collar of Ferdinand's doublet. According to one account, Tonradel forced the Archduke to sit down at his desk. Taking a list of their demands out of his own doublet, the rebel placed them on the desk in front of the Archduke and screamed in Latin, "Scribet, Fernandus!" What would have happened next had these men remained undisturbed and allowed to continue this rather one-sided dialogue will never be known. For at precisely this moment, the sound of horses' hooves and the cracked notes of a distant cavalry trumpeter brought the confrontation to an abrupt halt. As the clatter of horsemen wheeling below brought both the Archduke and his persecutors to the window, no one was arguably more surprised than Ferdinand. Below, to the consternation of the crowd, were several hundred imperial cuirassiers under their colonel, Gilbert Saint-Hilaire. The regiment was named after their first proprietary colonel, Count Heinrich Duval de Dampierre. Saint-Hilaire had been sent to the Archduke's aid by the only member of Ferdinand's family not to have deserted him, his younger brother, Leopold from Tyrol. The cuirassiers had ridden hard from the Western Alps and reached Vienna via Krems. Their timing was impeccable. Ferdinand straightened himself up and noticed that the confidence of even the most brutal of his opponents had evaporated. Thurn was too much of a realist to try to settle accounts with Ferdinand surrounded by loyal cavalry. As Saint-Hilaire's men dismounted and with swords drawn raced up the stairs to the Habsburg, the rebels adopted almost instantly a very different mien. No more blood, they insisted, should be spilt. Thurn and his men bowed and withdrew. Whatever the precise sequence of the encounter, and modern Jesuit historians challenge some of the details, there can be little doubt that had Ferdinand yielded that June day of 1619, the Counter-Reformation in his lands would have stalled, and the Habsburgs would have ceased to play any further meaningful part in the history of Central Europe. With Bohemia and Lower Austria lost, the keys to Central Europe would have been surrendered. It is even likely that Catholicism would have become a minority cult, practiced north of the Alps only by a few scattered and demoralized communities. For the army and the dynasty, the events of 5 June 1619 were no less critical. They had forged the umbilical cord, which would bind them together until 1918. Henceforth, dynasty and army would mutually support each other. From this day there would be, for 300 years, a compact between Habsburg and soldier, indivisible and unbreakable, through all the great storms of European history. The army, first and foremost, would exist to serve and defend the dynasty.